Welcome to I Hate It Here, the podcast for HR and people professionals, making the hardest job in the world just a little bit easier. I'm Hiba Youssef.
I feel like what I heard around me was mostly like, you're going to hate the first few years of working. It's really boring. It's really repetitive. People will treat you like shit. Just like suck it up, stay quiet. Eventually it will get better. And when I tell that story sometimes to younger people in the workplace, just to even see their face, they're just looking at me with shock that anyone would accept that.
Managing people shouldn't feel like you're juggling while blindfolded. Lattice can help as your all-in-one HR platform that scales with your business and keeps everyone happy. And we mean everyone. Lattice isn't just for HR teams. Their AI-enhanced platform helps every employee grow in their role, every manager lead fearlessly, and every organization succeed by unlocking the whole team's potential. No trade-offs, no regrets. That's the power of people plus AI. Leave management doesn't have to be painful, impersonal, or keep you buried under a mountain of spreadsheets. Tilt turns life's biggest moments into opportunities for care and connection instead of a paperwork nightmare. And on September 17th, they're making a game-changing announcement that will transform leave of absences from an administrative afterthought into a cultural cornerstone. Welcome back to another episode of your favorite podcast. I'm Hiba, your favorite HR person, and today I've got a doozy of an episode lined up for you. There was a time when climbing the ladder was the dream when it came to things like the corner office, the title, the power, the paycheck. It all meant that you made it. But lately, that dream kind of feels more like a cautionary tale. And in this episode, we're going to talk about a hard truth that hits close to home for a lot of people. My team doesn't really want the top job. And honestly, I don't blame them because behind almost every success story I've heard is also a burnout story. And behind every leadership promotion is a stack of late nights, impossible decisions, and emotional labor that really no one prepares you for. And what happens when all that ambition shifts? Well, people either start opting out because they can't lead or because they might not want to. And joining me today to get into all of this is Ciara Lakhani. Ciara is the Group Chief People and Culture Officer at Element Logic, a tech company automating warehouse operations globally. Her career spans work at organizations of different sizes, including GE, where she held global HR roles for 6 years, and startups such as Compass, where she led the people function through hypergrowth from 84 to over 400 employees ahead of its IPO. Ciara brings a sharp lens to the human side of scale, culture, and accountability, and is known for her honest takes on motivation, autonomy, and why everyone should not be a manager. Basically, she's the perfect guest for today's conversation. Ciara, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me, Hiba. Hi, everyone.
I'm so excited you're here. I feel like we're going to have such a good time to talk about this. Also, this topic was your idea. I pitched her on a hard truth and she said, what about the fact that nobody wants the top job anymore? And I said, I don't even know if I want the top job anymore.
That was probably the same mood I was in at the moment. My mood changes though, but no, I remind myself every day, I choose to be here. I've been through an IPO already. I'm not a prisoner here. I'm lucky.
You've done my one dream project is to lead a company through an IPO.
Oh, I left before that. That job was so crazy that I was like, you go on without me. I will take the stock options. But
give it to the head of legal. I'm not interested in this anymore.
Very happy I did that job, but not a life experience I would want to relive.
Okay, that's good to know. Maybe I will caveat my new dream project with maybe not. Before we get into like our hard truth episode, I've also been asking every guest, like, what's one general hard truth about work other than the one we're clearly talking about today? Does anything come to mind for you?
I think that everybody's motivations are different. I mean, in the role that I'm in, I'm not sure about you, I spend so much time where we're sitting in meetings and we want to talk about how to make sure everybody is motivated and aligned. And I find there's so much groupthink in a lot of those meetings where people talk about what would motivate them. And I'm like, hi, like us here on the executive team do not represent the majority of hundreds of people working here. So I think remembering that leads to so many things ladder up to that.
I wrote a whole newsletter about motivation for this exact reason, because everyone lately has been like, well, everyone's motivated by compensation. And I'm like, yes, and yeah, like yes, you need general money to pay to exist in this world, but like there's so much more that actually motivates people that if you spent time learning that, it could actually help you be a better leader, a better manager, a better coworker, just to like understand that not everybody is motivated by just money.
Totally. And a huge shout out and thank you again to Mafelda Garces, who was on my team at Dashlane, the previous company I was at full time. She led an engagement check, kind of stay interview process for the company. And once we rolled it out the first time, we had leaders actually take the results of asking those questions that she trained them to ask and rolling up what would actually retain people. And yeah, it was not money in the vast majority of cases. And of course, some people said, well, maybe people are uncomfortable talking about other things, but you heard the real things, the things that lead to the type of burnout that you talked about in one of your past episodes I listened to on the plane last night. Just people wanting like their frustrations resolved and things that have gotten stuck. So,
Yeah. There's like that insane stat I have to go look at about how many people would pick a new manager over a raise.
Yeah.
And I find that stat fascinating. I'm like, if that doesn't tell you anything about motivation, like that surely should. Okay, but today's episode, we're talking about the maybe not everybody wants that job at the top. And so I kind of want to start with when we were talking back and forth about this episode, this was an idea you pitched and I loved it because I was like, oh, what a good topic. And no one's really talked about this yet. When did you first realize that maybe your team wasn't interested in climbing to the top? And how did that make you feel?
Yeah, I don't know if it's just me, but I find I have this with other topics as well. Sometimes until something's a trend, I don't realize that I've
Yeah.
realized it. Like I took in
Same.
information, but there was so much going on, I didn't register it. I think we know how that is in HR jobs. Like our multitasking is out of control. So no idea is the honest answer to that. But I think at some point, which I can't even remember precisely, when I realized that it had become a trend, when I realized it was multiple people at some of the companies where I'd led teams. I think the first thing that I thought, and this shows like how used to being a member of the executive team I've become, was like, oh shit, we're gonna have a pipeline. This can be a problem. This is a succession planning problem and challenge. And a lot of my feelings about it are still there, but I think it's also mixed with a lot of like empathy, and I don't want to talk about anyone's personal story. I have permission from one person that if I talk about her more and people might guess, it's okay. She says, as long as I don't say terrible things about her, but I have nothing terrible to say about her. She's amazing. Yeah. And if these leaders could guess that she never wanted to be their official peer, they would probably, a lot of them, go off and cry literally because she would be excellent. But a lot of empathy, and people have really valid reasons and concerns. So I think our succession planning challenge for the future as leadership teams will be like, if we need this job, how do we make it so that people are willing to do it?
Yeah. I think I first observed it on TikTok. I can't believe I've been on TikTok. I got on TikTok late. So I was like, I can't do this. I can't join this app. Like, this is going to wreck all my focus and control. And then I finally joined TikTok, and it was just like very interesting to just observe the conversations about work happening there. And I observed like a lot of people being like, we don't want the top job. Like, who wants that? We would rather just like get paid well to like do our basic job and not have to go above and beyond and not have to be this leader who has to take on so much. And then I look at the world right now where we have like layoffs happening all the time. It feels like for the last 2 years, consistently, I'm reading a headline about a layoff every single day. And we have the introduction of new technology like AI that's like creating this like rapid pace culture and change in our workplaces. And I look at both of those and I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I'd want to be a leader right now either. Like, it makes sense. But I mean, I am a leader, so now I'm like kind of stuck in here. But I think a lot more people are looking at that top job and they're just like, with everything at play right now, it's not really worth it. And that I think is just so interesting. But like, we are quickly to judge people who don't want that and say like, oh, maybe they're not ambitious enough, which I think is absolutely the wrong discussion. And that brings me to like my next question about success. Like, has the definition of success actually shifted for this generation of workers? Like, maybe what used to be aspirational actually isn't anymore.
Yes, the grand debate that I've been having with so many leaders for the past decade. So there's a Deloitte survey out this year, I think in May, and according to that survey, and I know that we can find data that supports different things, but only 6% of Gen Z surveyed there said that becoming a senior leader is their main career goal.
Yeah, I mean, 6%.
Yeah, it's low.
That you're also right from a succession plan. This is like probably my worst nightmare.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if they don't want to be leaders, who's going to be leaders? Because like in what they said, like in the next 10 years, like Gen Z and millennials will be the majority of the workplace.
Yep.
Wow. So like, what do you think is really driving that? Like, are we defining success differently now more than ever?
So I also was not super early on TikTok, mostly because I'm not really of that generation, but I am on it now. But it's crazy. I like will be like, oh, I haven't had time for TikTok. Oh, yeah. I forgot to watch TikTok for the past 2 weeks. So the addictive factor is not working on me. Apparently, that's all my work communications that I'm stuck in the big dopamine loop with. But so you could tell me, but a lot of what some people I've talked with personally have said is just like, I see what you do and it's just too much. So I'm sure there's different ways to characterize it, and you've had good talks with a lot of guests, but off the top of my head, it's just like in our job, we have the scope that's probably the second broadest to the CEO. So we're seeing everything that happens. And also people are bringing us a lot of challenges and negative emotional content. And then oftentimes they're positioning that's like our problem or that we have to do something about it.
Yeah.
Not giving appreciation when we do something about it, and not understanding like basics about how we would do or not do our job. So I think that added to the challenge that I've seen executives in all disciplines go through this. Like, you're great at your career, your manager knows how great you are at your profession. Now all of a sudden you're working for a CEO that usually, minus maybe one other person on the exec team, depending on that CEO's background, has no appreciation for the career that you do. And your peers around the table, they have no appreciation for the career that you do. And every time that you talk about an issue, people will see it different ways because they've been socialized that different things are important to talk about, et cetera. That's a huge shift from working under someone who's like, I understand what you do and I see how well you're doing it.
Yeah. You're just hitting. So like we just wrapped our reviews today. I think I was telling you this before I hit record on this button. We just wrapped up our reviews today. And this was like a real feeling I had while writing my review, because I was like, there's so many things that nobody knows the things that I do. Like even my CEO who I report to, he said, he was like, yeah, I read your review. And I was like, damn, I forgot we did that. And I'm like, yeah, you forgot, but it's like, it's a lot of work. And then I also feel like there's respect for other crafts, but I don't feel like there's respect for my craft a lot of times. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not the numbers person. Yeah, I'm not we made this revenue happen. Yeah, I'm not, but like all the things underneath it are things I do to make that possible. And I feel like a lot of people don't realize that. And there's like not an appreciation for the HR craft in itself is what I feel like is the general sentiment around the world. Like I feel like HR teams don't get the respect they deserve. But then on top of that, like you get finally to like that top HR level, and it's like the outside world hates on you and critiques you. Your inside world doesn't really see every little thing you do to make their job amazing. And then I end up caught up in a cycle of like, does anyone even care that I exist here? I'm being like such a dramatic little baby about this, but like I'm like coming off my review. So I'm like, I understand there's a part of leadership that is like silent and like you don't get the appreciation you deserve. But I also feel like for HR, it's almost even more extreme because people don't realize the cognitive load you're under any given day.
Agree. And I'm sure all the listeners, even those that are, not reporting into a CEO or a different discipline right now, relate to this because just by virtue of like doing some people work, right? We do have been underestimated, underappreciated, under-respected. And I was just talking with my TA team because we're looking for an HR VP to cover mostly our Oslo and some other regions. So shout out if anyone knows excellent people that have experience working in Norway or in Norway. We really need it.
Can you just hire me so I can move to Norway? I love Norway. Never been, but I'm
Do you
obsessed with the
seriously want
country.
to move to Norway? We can talk
I'm
about that later.
I'm like obsessed with the country. Like, have not been. So I've been to all the other Nordic countries. I've not been to Norway yet, but every time I see pictures of it, I'm like, I could live in a cabin in the middle of nowhere in Norway, and I think I would be very happy as long as there's a bookstore nearby. Sorry. So you're hiring
No,
for?
you're welcome to keep
I'm like,
advertising beautiful
I love
Oslo,
this.
where we want to search
Yeah.
for somebody on the team. So
Literally, if you are looking for a job, you know who to hit up now. Your
yeah.
LinkedIn will be in the show notes. They will hit you up. Okay, but you're hiring for someone in Norway.
Right. So we're explaining to the TA team, right, that it needs to be a person that's okay with all of that, right? It doesn't need to be a person if they have not been an HRBB before, but they've done a lot of influence and change management, can show that they're adaptable. They're a quick learner. But if they're not okay with people sometimes thinking that the person from the people team is the most clueless person in the room, or, they finally listen to the idea and then they say it was their own idea, those kind of things, right? So I think all of us in this profession, at least for me, maybe the transition from reporting into a leader within the people space to reporting to CEO was not as big of a shock in that way, right? Because we are already dealing with that. But yes, being the part that was a shock, that was hard maybe, is being in the middle between your team being like, oh my God, the exec team needs to understand that the company needs X, Y, Z, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you go and represent it and they're like, no, and your team needs to understand. So yes, being in the middle of like absolutely everything, which is, again, you also practice that in certain ways at all levels in the people space, but you really get a ton of it every day once you're on the exec team.
Yeah. Everyone's always like, ooh, I would love to get in those exec team meetings. I'd love to be in the exec team Slack. I'm like, would you? Would you really? Because like exec teams are like fascinating to me, from the structure of how everyone communicates with each other to like who's there and who's even in the room and what they have to share. So I don't know. I don't have any good exec team like juicy details to share. Our exec team meets every Thursday and we talk about like everything regarding the business, from like people to strategic imperatives to all the good stuff. And I guess some people would find it juicy, but I mostly just come to it with like, okay, what are our biggest challenges we're facing? And like, how am I going to fix them is like what I end up doing every week, which is very interesting. When I thought about the getting to the top job, like I think I shared this earlier in the season, I like set all these weird goals for myself when I entered the workplace. Like I want to be a VP by the time I'm 30 and a C-suite by the time I'm this age. And it was really all like title hungry, honestly, I think early in my career. And I think like the more I learned about what it means to be a leader, the more I was like, okay, I like genuinely want to be a leader. But why do you think that top job honestly might not be appealing to most people anymore? Like, are we just of a different era, do you think?
It's probably partially that. It feels to me, again, I'm not an expert and I didn't research, but it feels like the level of trust that being sold most of your identity coming from your job, the era of like broad trust in that seems to be over.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just what people think they're going to get back. Because like for me, growing up in New York and coming into the HR space in 2003 when I finished university, I feel like what I heard around me was mostly like, you're going to hate the first few years of working. It's really boring. It's really repetitive. People will treat you like shit. Just like suck it up, stay quiet. Eventually it will get better. And when I tell that story sometimes to younger people in the workplace, just to even see their face, they're just looking at me with shock that anyone would accept that. Whereas at my age, I thought if I want to do things that I want to do in life, like when I started working, I had never left the United States. I didn't have a passport. Now I live in France and I'm talking to you from Oslo that you really want to go to. So you are welcome to come visit here. And I thought if I want to do these things, then this is what I need to do because that's what society tells me. But that's no longer the case. So as much as we want to brainstorm in an executive room, and especially when you say, hey, people want to know what happens in an executive meeting, but it's not actually that interesting, the mystique that some people picture and is one of the only things left. Then there's the power, but does the power come with more upsides than downsides and all that kind of stuff, right? It's not for everyone. And so I think it's positive if more people realize that, but we do also separately have an issue and a trust issue in workforces, even separate from which jobs people want to do, because trust affects everybody collaborating together in all different roles. But that's a whole other pod.
That's a whole other episode. Okay, so you work across, like you've worked North America-based teams in the US and now you're international, so you get to experience different cultures. Have you noticed that like there is, like we hear all the time in America that like our identities are wrapped up in our careers. Have you noticed that it's really not like that abroad? Like people really do separate career from life?
Yeah, and I think it was Ash who did a great episode with you recently. And she was talking about in Berlin, right? She can get really far and people won't even ask her
Ask
what she
what you
does.
do.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's similar in France, similar across like many European settings that I spend a lot of time in. But I feel like maybe is it becoming more like that in the US as well, right? Because it's just, again, like people don't want to tie up their identity in that anymore. And it was something that was in some people's minds sold to people as
Yeah.
propaganda, and other people would disagree with that. And as an executive, as a company, I'm even like, my PR team said I could do this podcast and they're going to listen to it. But yeah, it's a matter of belief. But I think there are really good things. And again, as I said, like I choose to be in this job and sometimes I have to remind myself, but I took 7 months totally off. Just got a French driving license and did like a French language test and was doing only kind of executive coaching of heads of people because that's what was giving me energy back. And when I started getting opportunities, first consulting opportunities, and then when I was called about Element Logic here in Oslo, I really didn't know if I wanted to go back in because, again, I have the privilege that I don't need to per se. Like my financial goals are humble enough that I don't need to live the type of life that I want to live. But then for me, I thought, okay, I already know what this is. I know what the pros and cons are. I find this opportunity really interesting. I find the culture of this company really interesting. The challenge, I kind of want to see what happens in the crazy workforce in the next 5 years of change. And somebody's got to do it. And I don't want to just like vent about it from the sidelines. So for me, I chose to go back in. But yeah, I think the choice is different for everyone. And if people are going to make more conscious choices instead of just blindly follow trends, then we just have to meet people where they are and give them information and support and see, like, is there a better way to structure this job that people would find more doable?
I love that you made that choice like actively. And because I keep telling people, like some people are like, this job is so hard. Like, how do you keep yourself going? And I'm like, in the really bad days, I just remind myself why I want to be here. I like keep coming back to my why. And I like love being an in-house operator. A lot of people are like, you could just create content or you could just do this. And I'm like, but I genuinely derive pleasure from like really complicated, messy situations that I have to untangle, that I have to build the steps for, that I'm the person in the room that's like, hey, here's a perspective we're missing. Here's something that you might not understand about this person or this culture or this role. And so I think this job is like also really cool. Like even on the most frustrating of days, I'm like, the world of work is going to change so radically in the next, it's changing right now, but I think like the next 5 years are going to be so interesting, like similar to like maybe what it was like in the dot-com boom. I was not working during the dot-com boom, but like maybe similar to that. And it becomes the experience that like may collectively define my career, honestly, in the next 50 years, if I'm still working in the next 50 years.
50 years.
I don't know.
You're
40
young,
years?
but
40 years? 40 years? How long
you love work that much? That's a huge endorsement.
How long am I going to work, you guys? I don't know. I'm already at the top. What do I do now? Just kidding. But I mean, like this job it's just really interesting. When we talk about leadership, like we're both in exec meetings, listening to leaders, working with leaders so closely, like what do you think it actually takes to be a great leader today? And are we being honest about that when we talk to future leaders?
It's a really good question. So I think this is going to be a little bit different for different company cultures, for different functions. And I think that's why so many of us here have worked on projects to try to define leadership competencies or skills or connected to company values. But if I have to try to get generic, I think it's, again, adaptability. And when I went to the CPO HQ conference last year, we had a great speaker on the future, and I regret that I am forgetting his name so that I can't cite it. But he talked about, like, instead of what are you going to learn, what are you going to unlearn? The most important thing that everybody needs to do for the next few years is be able to unlearn. So that adaptability, right? That it's natural in our brains that like neurons are going to fire in the patterns that were already established, and we're going to have heuristics. And especially in these type of jobs where you deal with so many topics, you can't rethink everything from scratch every time. Like you will just collapse from stress right away, and that's it. But if you're going to be, it has always been like this, that's going to increasingly be a challenge for you. So I think adaptability and unlearning which lens to adaptability is going to be probably the top thing.
Oof, we've all had those days. Like, remember when that all-star employee bailed with zero warning? Or when you found out half your managers were writing reviews based on vibes? We call those regrets. And yeah, they could have been avoided with some help from Lattice, the first HR platform where people plus AI succeed together. Lattice's suite of AI-powered tools helps everyone, not just HR, thrive and lead fearlessly. Whether you're trying to boost performance, engage your team, or finally stop second-guessing HR decisions, Lattice has your back. Ready to leave those regrets in the dust? Check out Lattice at lattice.com/no regrets. That's LATTICE.com/no regrets. Let's be honest, is outsourced leave management just a fancy way of saying you've outsourced the humanity right out of it? Tilt is here to fix that. Their AI-powered platform handles all the admin tasks that eat into your time, like payroll updates, compliance tracking, status changes, so that you can actually focus on supporting your people through life's big, messy, and human moments. And on September 17th, they're dropping something that will turn leave from an afterthought into your secret weapon for culture and strategy. So mark your calendars, because Tilt is keeping HR trusted, strategic, and human first. I'm trying to remember if I have the book behind me. I know I have Adam Grant original, but he wrote Think Again, right? Was that the most recent one Adam Grant's written? All about the ability to like rethink things. And I found that very interesting because I don't consider myself like a stubborn, set in her way person. But some of my friends might actually listen to this and be like, false, bitch, you definitely are stubborn sometimes. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So I also read that book because I was like, I have to reimagine almost everything I do. And I have to like not just think the same way over and over again about the problems we're facing, because we're getting new and unique problems. And so I love that you mentioned that one as like something we should talk about for future leaders. I honestly think curiosity is a big one too, that we don't like, we've made it at work sometimes where like we don't let people be curious because we view that as almost like a weakness to be asking too many questions. And I'm always I'm always trying to tell people, like, ask as many questions as you can ask. Be curious about the problems we're solving. Keep asking why until you understand the why. And you can articulate it and then go tell other people the why. I feel like we've lost that sometimes at work, where people are like, just do the work and shut up.
Yeah. Well, the hard part is when I fall prey to this, and maybe it's part of why some people have worked under me are like, ooh, don't want to do what you do. But sometimes I just have like such info overload and decision fatigue by a certain point in the day. I'm like, does your question need to be asked now? Can you brainstorm it with an LLM first? Like, I only have so much capacity. So if you're going to ask me 90 million questions that I don't know why it's me that's needed to answer them, I am going to start to like mentally combust.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's actually fair, actually. I'm now thinking about that, that would also drive me insane. But I think more so the fact that like if I can tell you the why and you understand the why, like any follow-up question, yes, go think about that before coming back to me and asking. Like you have a pretty big team. I have a team of one. So she and I are like always iterating live with each other all day long, where I'm just stream of consciousness telling her my thoughts. And it works really well because like usually if she has a question, I've already answered it in the context I've tried to give as much as possible to her. But I think we've just like lost, I don't know, like curiosity, critical thinking as a society. I feel like we're at an all-time low.
Agree. Yeah. Well, people's attention are taken on a lot of things. If you're watching too many TikTok videos, for instance, right? And you took in all your reflections about that are working consciously and subconsciously. And now you're supposed to think about creative things, right? It's not as easy.
Did you read that article where like everyone was like, ChatGPT is making us stupid because like nobody's asking, no one's thinking about things. They're just going to ChatGPT to ask everything. And so also just to think about things, like remember you have a brain, you don't have to ask AI everything. You can ask AI most things, but also think about it first before you ask.
Yeah, I was wondering how will people who start with like LLMs too early in their careers be in meetings where they have to brainstorm things live? They're going to be like, hold on 1 second.
Someone was telling me the example today where they were like, this AI agent from our team talks to an AI agent from another team. So like, we don't even have to ask questions anymore. The AI just talk to each other. And I was like, what? Like, don't you want to brainstorm with each other? Like come up with ideas, and like creative energy in the room is like so fun to me. And they're like, no, we just really needed to get this thing done. So it's just easier for them to ask the agents the questions, not us directly.
Yeah, well, that ties into what you're saying about curiosity and is there time for it and time pressure. And as we're in this era too, where we transition towards investors expecting fewer people to be able to do more work, how do you get there in the beginning? But that's also a whole other
episode. We've now delivered almost 3 episodes of content. We have to come back. You're coming back next season. Okay. It's happening. I've already decided.
Live from Oslo.
Live from Vienna, Virginia. We are coming back next season. Okay. Back to our topic of like nobody wanting the top job. How much of the reluctance to kind of take that leadership role on, do you think is like fear versus wisdom potentially? Like, do you think people are avoiding leadership actively because they're scared or because they've watched it break people?
What I've personally seen is mostly the latter. And I think especially for people in people teams that I've worked with, they see, because we see a lot of things in people teams. And I think that with my direct reports, for us to be able to do a lot, we have to work very openly. There's a high level of trust. Yeah. I also believe like, hey, when I'm not free to speak to this peer of mine, like you should handle the conversation and be interchangeable. So a lot of them have been able to experience parts of that. And I think people have takeaways of like, oh, that other executive is very challenging to talk to and is like not listening and not finding a way to solve their own problem and just going in circles and then wanting to talk to me about it for 2 hours. And that's super frustrating. And I only want to do so much of it. So yeah, a lot of this is just examples, right? And then obviously I can't be an objective judge of myself, but maybe part of it is like, maybe I should look happier and look like a better ambassador of choosing to do this. So that's probably part of it as well. But yeah, I think a lot of it is knowledge. And one time, one of my team members at a previous company said to me, like, I really love the type of work that we do. And like, I get to speak with the executives, but I don't have to go to these 3 days locked in a room together. And I don't have to deal with the whole team putting me in the middle between this and that. And yeah. And especially once I moved to Europe, I mean, I have people working for me in the US, they make more salary than me, of course, because it pays less here in Europe. So sometimes I thought, I would like to switch places.
I'd like to do something else. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be fun.
Listen, it has broken me for sure. Like I have been a broken leader. I have told this story so many times that there was like a point during the pandemic where like both my arms were going numb because I was working so much. And I was just like hunched over my computer and I had like multiple doctors and neurologists be like, maybe you should consider a new career path. And I was like, no, I love my job. I love this thing that I do. Like I'm the loud mouth in the room that like I always wish someone had advocated for me in the room. So I'm in the room to like advocate for all the people who never get what they deserve. So that's what keeps me going. But I remember also thinking like, I've been broken by this job. And I'm sure I was a horror story for a lot of people. My direct report at my last company, I'd worked with her twice. And she always said, I never want your job.
Yeah.
And now she's in my job actually, and she's doing a killer job. But she was like, there's a part of it, like the selling and like the front facing part of HR that like, I don't want to do. And you do such a good job when you're like navigating conflict and like working with these two people in conversation and like having the empathy to like guide she's like, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, I also think like, look, like, I'm sure you're a great leader. And I think like showing our frustration also then helps people understand, is this something I want to opt in or opt out of?
Yeah.
And like all we can ask is like, maybe they want to opt in someday. But again, I don't think the leadership role is for everyone. I think there is like a personality maybe that I don't want to say that you need to have because that doesn't feel very inclusive, but I think there are things you have to enjoy doing if that's the job you want to get to.
Yeah, well, I think if I'm honest, like there's the least favorite part of my job is all the like executive team stuff that I do. And like a lot of love for
Yeah.
many of the executives that I've worked with and work with. And I'm really lucky with the culture here at Element Logic. But yeah, do I like to sit in long meetings talking about topics that have been told to me one-on-one with people that don't understand my profession? Or do I like when I'm like actually doing the thing and we're together as the people team? Like, yeah, I like the latter, but I understand somebody has to do it. It's important. And I think every job is like that, right? There's going to be things you like, there's going to be things you don't like, but it's like, what do you think is it worth it on balance?
Yeah, that's why I take back my point on having the personality. You just have to like want to like the things that you're doing, because I think anyone with any personality could be a leader. You just have to actively want to opt into the things that it takes at that leadership level.
Yeah.
Something I think people don't really talk about, and we've touched on a little bit in this episode, is invisible costs of leadership. Like, what are some of the invisible costs of leadership that people rarely talk about, often until it's too late?
I think your friendships at work, right? How it feels to be part of the workplace, that definitely shifts. And anyone who's ever been like promoted while within the same workplace has probably definitely experienced that. And I've been fortunate to still find ways to have really good friendships, but you know, there's something that's
Yeah.
different, right? When you're a leader that you wouldn't have otherwise. People in your personal life not being super supportive of it and not super understanding. So that's definitely something that I've experienced.
The friendship was a good one.
Hidden. I don't know. I feel like those are the two that come
Those
to
are
mind
really-
that maybe are not really talked about as much.
Those are two really good ones. I actually had someone DM me on TikTok, because I made a TikTok about working in HR, and someone DM'd me and was like, how do you maintain friendships at work while working in HR?
Oh, that's what we ask in most of our interviews before we would hire someone to work together on a people team. Because especially when you're in a culture where we really value being friendly and authentic and open, because sometimes some people will come into interview and maybe they haven't had a chance to ever think through it. They're like, well, I can't be friends with anyone, or I don't know how I will answer them if they ask me what somebody else is paid. And it's like you said on a previous episode, you just say, hey, I can't tell you that.
I can't tell you that. That was like the perfect line. Like, I loved when people would do that, because they would just like giggle and be like, so you think, and I'd be like, no, I can't tell you that. And I got to the point where like multiple employees would be like, I know you can't tell me. And I'm like, okay, then why are you going to ask the question? And it became like kind of a bit between me and some of our employees, where I'm like, I can't tell you. Like, I am at the end of the day still your HR person. So if you are doing something to like endanger the company or endanger yourself, I have a responsibility to do something. Yeah. And I think like a lot of people are like, whoa, but I thought you were my friend. And I'm like, if you're talking to me, I am your HR person. Even when employees come to me, I always let the record show. I'm just like, hey, whatever you're going to tell me, if you're hurting yourself or hurting the company, I have like a duty to go report it. Second piece, I will tell you if any of your other feedback you share with me is feedback I'm sharing with anyone else. I'm always honest about that. I'm like, and if it is, you will know exactly who I'm sharing it with and if I attributed it to you or not. And I think that's how you maintain that level of friendship. Like, I can talk to employees about things in like pop culture. They know better than to come to me and be like, so do I make as much money as this other person? Because they know I'm never going to tell them. Like, that's not something I would do. You bring up the personal life one. That's really interesting, because a lot of my friends, I think, are very into my job because they get to hear the tea, because I have no one else to tell anything to. So I'll call my best friend. I'll be like, you'll never guess what so-and-so did. And she's like, that guy, he's always doing that. Like, we're just chit-chatting about it. But I have had other friends that are like, you're always tired. Like, maybe you should have a different career, or you pay attention to these things too much, or you're coming to me as an HR person, not as my friend. And I really struggled with that a lot.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I've had people talk about, how it's great to see the US united over the shooting that occurred of the healthcare executive. And then when you work with CEOs for so many years, you're like, I don't know how to feel about your statement.
I don't know what to say there.
I feel a bit conflicted.
I had so many people message me about the Coldplay, like personal friends message me about the Coldplay CEO. And they're like, give me your read on the situation. I'm like, listen, this is not the time or day. Like, I I do not want you coming to me with this, but I did give one of my friends because she was like, I just need to understand. And I was like, well, potentially that person like reported to HR, like, or HR usually reports to the CEO. There's like a complicated power dynamic. Like he abused a very important position of power. Like there's a lot at play here. And my friends, I think, got sick of it quickly when I like went into like the philosophical rabbit hole of like power dynamics at work. They're like, we thought you'd just give us like a funny take. And I was like, no, this is like a serious thing.
No,
but,
have you listened to my pod? It's
no,
going to be funny, but also philosophical.
It's going to be funny, but like we also need to hold CEOs accountable. Okay, anyways. But it's just interesting. The personal thing is very relevant, I think, to a lot of people as they're thinking like, also, how do I navigate my lived experience in the world and then show up as like a good HR leader too is like a big thing that's been talked about lately. I want to talk a little bit about like maybe ambition and redefining success. What a big topic. But do you think ambition looks different now? Like I touched on it previously, but is opting out of leadership still seen as like lacking drive?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think in the type of executive discussions that I'm in, it depends on how like open-minded and up-to-date a particular executive is at a particular time. To some people, like, yes, that's seen as lacking drive. That's why like I wouldn't get on here and give list of people like this person said they don't want to do this, because there might be somebody that will interpret that as, oh, that person is worse at their job than I thought they were.
Yeah.
No. And it's well, what is ambition, right? Is it wanting to get as much as possible for yourself? Is it just wanting to do a good job? I find that different companies use that word in really different ways. So that becomes hard to say. But for me, like, I think most people take pride in their work and what they do. They might have a different set of contexts or a different set of goals that have not been updated. And like, yes, there's some people who are not very like engaged in what they're doing, right? And this is what matters. And to me, that's what matters. And again, if one job needs to be made more desirable or less desirable, that will be the challenge we face to attract people to the job.
Drive is so interesting because I think like if somebody told me they wanted to be a leader, I'd be intrigued to know why. But I also think like you can be ambitious about your craft as well and be like a really high impact, like IC, and not be a leader. Just be like obsessed with the craft that you have at work. And instead you're focused on that. And so I think like when people are quick to write people off as like lacking drive because they don't want a promotion or they don't want to be a leader, I'm like, there's so much more at play here. Like calling back to your initial point about learn what motivates people. I think that is more important than somebody raising their hand and saying, I want to be a leader and not knowing why or what it entails.
I agree. Yeah, we do have the challenge though, because I've had this discussion also in so many tech companies of like, okay, engineers have a IC career path where they can do really well. They can do really interesting work. They can keep getting paid more. Can we have that in our marketing function? Can we have that in our people function? If we offer that, like, how do the economics make sense, right? For engineering, it can make sense because you need that. But the reality remains that like somebody needs to lead people. Every time I've talked to people who have worked in like a holacracy experiment, like I haven't seen evidence personally that felt like it was really working for people over time. Like people need somewhere to go. Somebody needs to do leadership. I know that there was a Chinese company that was having an LLM act as their CEO and lead people and make decisions.
Oh my God, like, my worst nightmare.
Super interesting. But yeah, people need something, and ideally real live connection so that there's some emotional content there.
It's so interesting you bring that up because some companies are really cutting that management layer. Have you seen that? Like Amazon did it, Dropbox did it. I foresee, honestly, we'll do it more and then have more employees report to managers. So like teams will get bigger. How do you think that is going to impact leadership? Like if we're cutting that middle management layer a lot, what do you think that means for leadership?
Well, that makes the job even harder, even less appealing, leading people who are going to feel even less satisfied with it. And I've seen a lot of leaders take the example of Jensen from NVIDIA, right, who supposedly has 40-something direct reports and doesn't do one-on-ones with them. And of course, like with NVIDIA's success and growth as a company, that will be inspiring to many leaders and CEOs especially. I get that. But our direct reports of a very large company who reports the CEO the same as like having people who are earlier in their careers be expected to navigate cross-functionally when they have no cross-functional peers that they're close with, et cetera. So I think there's still leadership tasks that will need to be performed for people to collaborate together. And this is why people come together in organizations, right? For the synergy that's going to make it more than what people could do individually on their own. And I think that's still going to be needed in many areas.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be fascinating to watch these next few years, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm like, hopefully we make it out of this. You mentioned like holacracy and different structures. Did I say that right? Holacracy? Is that what they call it?
I believe so. Yeah.
Cool. If we wanted more people to like raise their hand for leadership, what do you think would have to change either structurally or culturally?
Broadly or like specifically in the people space?
Broadly and in the people space. Sorry, I want both answers.
Not an expert, but always like happy broadly to, take a guess. Broadly, I think people, if they're not going to blindly trust, they want to understand what they're going to get. So being more clear about like what kind of hours are going to be expected. Yeah. What kind of travel frequency is going to be expected. How much time doing certain types of tasks, such as like sitting in meetings with other executives, which some people like and some people don't.
Yeah.
And like, what is it probably going to pay? And of course, there are very real challenges to promising all of this so far in advance, and that it's not going to change, especially when the dynamics of work are in such flux.
Yeah.
But I think that's where people are. Whereas like maybe when I started my career, there was still a lot of like, this is going to be great. You're not going to be that unhappy as an executive. You're going to make money and be able to do things, and you're going to feel proud of your impact. So like, just strive for it. And everybody was like, okay, people around me trust this. I trust this. Let's go. But if there's not that trust, then people need more specifics and understanding of like what the choice would be.
Yeah, I love that. Just lay it out on the table with like especially when you're recruiting for that exec role, the more transparent you can be about what does it actually mean to be an executive in this environment, I think then helps you find the actual best candidate for the role.
Yeah, even though most places I've worked, we don't know anything about what the role is.
100%. Especially,
or even I took this role and I was like, there's certain things I know and certain things that I can tell the CEO didn't have time to think about, and that I get it, but I've done this role before, and so I would take a leap of faith.
Yeah. Oh, my first head of people role, I had no idea what I was walking into, and I did not ask the right questions. The second chief people officer role I took, I was like, I'm asking all the questions. I want to know all the bad things before I get there so I can choose to opt in or opt out of this, because like it's not worth my sanity. With that, I think I want to end with like a piece of advice. Like you've shared so much and so much good, and you're coming back for multiple episodes. So like this is an arc that we're going to carry. What is one thing you would tell somebody who is considering the top job, but maybe they're quietly questioning it?
I would say reach out, right? So many of us, send me a LinkedIn message, send some of the other guests LinkedIn message who have been in the role, and just talk to a few people and see what it's like. And then that might give you enough clarity to know if you want to try it. And then if you want to try it, like you can try it. Of course, like people will be upset if you start the job and then you say, hey, it's not for me, but that doesn't mean you can't do it without burning bridges.
For sure.
So like, try it.
I love that. You never know if you're going to like something unless you try it at least once. Like I did. I mean, my first head of people job was it was wild, but I was like, this is it. This is the thing I want. Right. Like I was like, I want this again. I just maybe want it with different people. So there's nothing bad that comes from trying it. And I also know a lot of HR people who got to that top position and were like, actually not for me. I just want to be like an IC. I just want to do HRBP work. I just want to do L&D work. And they went and took those jobs instead afterwards and are perfectly happy with what they've chosen to do. So
and I don't think it sets you back from that either, because I think so many people who would be your hiring manager understand, the differences.
Absolutely. This has been such a fun episode, by the way. Like I think I still want this job. So I would like to say at the beginning, I thought, maybe not. But now I'm like, no, for sure. For sure. I think I want to do this for a while. Thank you so much for joining me today. For people who want to get in touch with you, I always put your LinkedIn in the show notes. Is that the best place for them to DM you?
Yes. Best place is LinkedIn.
Love it. Okay. Well, it'll be in the show notes and then you'll be back again. And I just want to say thank you for spending time with me. I know it's like What time is it? 8 p.m. where you are? 7 p.m.?
6 p.m. Not too
Okay,
bad.
it's time for you to go have fun. It's time for you. Actually, you're probably going to go answer emails and Slacks. But
I am going to go out to dinner with a team member. And because we're in Oslo, we have many hours of sunlight left in the summer. So
that's true. And if anyone, this episode will be out like relatively quick. So if anyone's interested in that job on your team, they can DM you.
Yep, let me know.
Love it. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Hiba.
Thanks for tuning in. Keep up with all the latest HR resources by subscribing on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen. And if you love I Hate It Here, tell an HR friend. I'll see you next time.